Hi, readers. It's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper, and welcome to a discovery of the favorite four-star books of mine in the year 2024. Now, we're not quite at the end of December, but I feel pretty confident that these will be the ones that stay with me over time. And that's really my criteria for listing these books that I gave 4 stars to. I gave 4 stars to other books as well, but these are the ones that will really stand out for me in some way. And I'm going to share with you why that is. But I feel like these are also all the books that will really stay with me in my heart or in my mind. They may not have been like incredible reads for me, although some of them were. You might ask then why they aren't 5 stars. And in some cases, I'm just not really certain, but in some cases, I am. Nevertheless, they just made an impact that I think will last for me for a while. I think I will remember what these books were about in a year, 2 years, 5, 7, 10 years from now, because they were pretty remarkable to me for one reason or another. So let's get started. So Tia Williams wrote a book called 7 Days in June, and I read it earlier in the year. And I have to say, I was very, very surprised by how much I loved this book. In fact, I do plan to read another one that she wrote this past year. I loved these characters. Were they always likable? Pretty much to me, but maybe not everybody finds them likable. I've seen a lot of folks talk about that. It is about a woman and a man who reunite as adults after having lived a very difficult teenage life and had been connected to each other through sex, drugs, and alcohol. But now they are both writers and they come back together. And I think what I loved about this was that they were flawed, that they had real life challenges, that they were good people trying to do good things, and that they really had an amazing relationship. It was not predictable, but it was very, very well written. And I think Tia Williams probably doesn't get the exposure that she deserves. I suspect that this next one that I'm going to read at some point, soon, is going to be fantastic. The next one is Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen. Now, I have listened to Julia Whalen narrate audiobooks for quite some time. I really love her voice, and I think she's a great narrator. It was really very meta when I discovered that she had written this book, and it was about an audiobook narrator, and that she was the author. And so in that was probably my original delight about this book, because I have to say that's quite clever. However, I also felt like, in addition to the fact that she narrated it brilliantly, it had a lot of depth and meat. I thought at first it was going to just be a frivolous romance and it would just be okay. But it really also dealt with human problems, with parents who are aging or grandparents who are aging, and relationships, and all of the access to success, whether you are experiencing it or whether you're not quite there. And I think she wrote a very thoughtful, caring book with characters that had some challenges, and maybe it was predictable for a lot of people, but for me, it didn't matter that I felt like it was going to end the way it ended. What mattered is that I cared about the people, and I will remember it. And I'm really glad that I got it on Libro.fm because I plan to listen to it again one day. It was really quite fun and enjoyable. I've talked about this one in many, many bookish communities this year. Erasure by Percival Everett. I stumbled upon this one too. I think I was listening to, I don't even know what, but maybe because the movie American Fiction had some buzz around it and I wanted to read the book first. It may have actually been the reason. Nevertheless, I loved this book so much. And again, 4 stars, I often love them very, very much. But what made this one unique was the plot. Again, this will always stay in my memory. This is about a Black author who's not getting a lot of attention. He's not a very happy guy. These also weren't necessarily always likable folks. He also has some family stuff going on. He has a brother that is gay and is really struggling with this, and how this has impacted, he thinks it's impacted his family. He has a mother who has dementia, and he's not really, doing a whole lot of successful publishing. but something happens. It's quite complicated in plot, which I loved, but yet it is just like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me right now? Kind of enjoyable. The movie isn't exactly the same as the book, so I really would recommend that you read Erasure. So this book's themes really are the publishing industry in general. What makes a book successful? Does it have to be this splashy, like gaudy, sexual thing, or can it be a literary piece of work that is really well done? What makes people buy books? What makes people stand out? All kinds of things. Ironically, I'm not certain because I have no connection or relationship to Percival Everett, but I suspect that the release of James this year, which I also enjoyed, but I didn't list it here, it was also a four-star read. The release of James probably did catapult him into a level of success that he hasn't had before, which is really just sort of life imitating art, art imitating life. I just think it's phenomenal. But I recommend Erasure. If you've read James and loved it, I think you'll also love Erasure too. But I think you don't have to have read anything else by Percival Everett to enjoy this one. And I listened to that one as well. Okay, I have a physical copy of the next one because a lot of these I listened to this year, obviously, but this is Still Life by Louise Penny. I was hesitant about this. It was one of my Read Like My Cousin's books, and my cousin Rita loves Louise Penny. I think she's all caught up on this series. But it was one, a daunting long series, which I tried not to engage in unless I really think I'm going to like them. And two, a lot of people said the first few books were really not good, and it took a while for them to like this author. But I have to say, I really enjoyed this first book very, very much. I didn't have any issue with it at all. I know there are some bumpy parts in this series for people, and I've been watching some of you in your relationship to the Gray Wolf currently, but I really enjoyed Still Life. It was a great introduction and a setup for Inspector Gamache and for his connection to others and for this little community where they live, which I can't remember the name of it, Three Pines. And just in general, I loved the pace of it, and I really felt connected to some of these characters in this little town. Now, will they all survive this series and stay alive? I don't know, but I do plan to go forward. And I think I read another one by her too. Did I read the second one? I did. I read the second one. And I liked it too. So my plan is, and I have purchased books 3 and 4 at the moment. So my plan is to go on to at least those. But I really did enjoy this one. And I'm happy that I gave it a shot because a lot of people aren't fans of Louise Penny. The next one was also a read like my cousin's read. I still have one to go, but this is Pung Shepard's The Cartographers. This was the first time I had ever read anything by this author, and my cousin's daughter, Sadie, recommended this to me. She really enjoyed it. And I did too. I know that a lot of people find this book to be problematic. I did not. I liked the plot of it. I liked the fantasy aspects of it. I guess it's more speculative, possibly, but I really thought that this was a great plot. And again, I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about this one, except to say that this woman has a relationship with a man who was like a mentor to her, and she was really deeply connected to him, and they had a bit of a falling out, and she ends up not working with him anymore in this field of cartography. She ends up going to work at kind of a store that people just come in and have maps printed or copied or something, just a lot less of a professional feel to this new job. And she misses this guy, and she suddenly gets an invitation to join this event. And it turns out that the man has been murdered. And there are some things that are left for her to sort of try to solve what has happened. And some other people show up in this book. And I just felt like I was on a ride to somewhere that I really, really wanted to go. And that destination was twisty and turny and fascinating, and I really, really enjoyed this book quite a lot. And so I know there's some folks that don't like the new one, but I really think this will stay on my shelves, and I possibly and probably will reread that one too. This one was a book club pick for from Becca at Books and Bujo, her Patreon group. We were part of this book club, and we can join each month if we want to read the book or not. This one is Delila Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, and it is a queer romance. It is not, it is carefree. Let's just say that. It's somewhat predictable. But what I enjoyed about this book was really that it came from a little bit of a different place. I do love to read books about LGBTQIA plus characters. I also like to read books in a series that are the first one because it feels like supporting the author, and it feels really good to be able to do that. I did try to start the second one and I didn't have the same experience with that one, so I put it down, at least for now. But Delila Green is a quirky, just kind of a grump character. And there are a number of other people in her life that have not been kind to her and her family, essentially. But her father has died, and something happens. I think her sister's getting married, as I remember. And she goes back home to be with them during this experience. And her sister do not get along really well either. She's just really prickly, honestly. But you do get to care about her. I never didn't like her, but she can be, I guess, an unlikable character to some. I always felt like, there was something there that she needed to break apart in order to, change her life. And so I won't let you know if she actually did do that or not, but you can probably speculate that this book is a typical romance. However, I read a lot more romance this year than I have in many years, so I really am kind of surprised by that and pleased by it because it was kind of fun to do so. So I definitely recommend this one. I listened to that one as well. This was a highly anticipated read for me that I not only purchased but I also read, and this is Marrying the Ketchups by Jennifer Close. And because this is set in Chicago and because it has a bit of a Cubs flair to it, I was really drawn to it. However, when I read it, I was really pleased with the result because I knew when I bought this that this was a gamble. It could have been just awful, right? But I loved this family, and I do love family dramas and family stories. That's really something that appeals to me. Did I have a terrible family experience? No, but I definitely, there were some ups and downs for us all along the way, but I would say very few of them compared to the folks that are in this book and some others that I've read. But this one is pretty recently set. So it is a family living in Chicago that really root for the Cubs, and the Cubs, have won the World Series. And so they're obviously stunned, as all of us were. They have a restaurant, and the family has some family members that are working at the restaurant managing it. But the main character of this book, who I didn't even look again at her name, Gretchen, has been living apart from them, and she has been in a band for a long time, and a successful one at that. And she returns back home for a period of time, and this one really does sort of explore family relationships. It explores what things outside of your family can do to you, how those things impact you, whether they're good, like the Cubs winning the World Series, or whether they're challenging. And I just really did feel like I was connected to this family, and I stayed with them on the journey. And I think it's probably most memorable because it was set in Chicago, but I do think that it was very, very well done. So I would read something else by that author for sure. Another romance, surprise, surprise, that really made me enjoy it is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I don't know what even possessed me to purchase this book because, again, I just am not someone who usually buys romance books. I did, however, have another Abby Jimenez book because it was the book of the year last year. I think it's called Yours Truly. And as a book of the month member, they give you one of those free each year. And I have not read that one. I have not read the first one, which is Part of Your World, but this was the one that I picked up. And I think I heard somebody talking about it on a podcast, and it felt like something that I might enjoy. So this is about a nurse who's traveling. She's loving being a traveling nurse because she's not attached to any specific place. and she travels with one of her best friends, and they just go around and live in different places and, Airbnbs and that sort of thing, and really just have a lovely time. But the big challenge in her life, and let me tell you what her name is because I don't remember. Emma. Her name is Emma. The big challenge in her life is that she meets these guys that she really thinks could be the one. And then it turns out that they break up with her and find the one after her. And she feels as though it's a bit of a curse. So fast forward, she decides to go on a dating app, just date a bunch of people randomly and not have any attachment to whether or not they're good people because she's going to break up with them and then find the love of her life in her mind. But she starts to connect with a man named Emmett on a dating app. No, his name is Justin. Why did I say Emmett? His name is Justin, and she and Justin start to go on some dates, and Justin has the same challenge. The same thing has happened to him. It was really well done. I don't want to tell you a ton about this plot. I said I wasn't going to plot these out much, but what I really liked about this is that they were real characters. You didn't necessarily think that this was going to go the way predictably it would go. They had some flaws. She was very stressed about her mother, about her life. He had some things in his life that were very heavy and complicated. And I just really felt like the flow of this went very, very well. And I will remember this one for a while. I do plan to read the others by this author in this three part, I guess, connection that you don't have to read them in order. Thank you for all of you who told me that. I think this one probably will still remain my favorite. I don't know. We'll see because, they could surprise me, right? Small Mercies, Dennis Lehane. This was one of the BookTube Prize nominees this last year, and it didn't make it to me to read. In fact, I'm not sure. I think it made it into the first or second grouping, and then I think it got tossed off. But it was one that I really wanted to read when they sent the list out and asked us to pick the ones that we would be interested in. This is a deep, dark, difficult read because it involves a mom who is working hard trying to support her kid, and the kid goes missing, and some other people have been in her child's life that have been a little nefarious, and she's afraid that her daughter is dead. I don't want to tell you anything else about the plot except just to say that it is surprising in many, many ways. This woman is probably like the woman I would be if something happened to my children. I'm a pretty peaceful, laid back person, but you don't mess with my kids or my grandkids. In fact, I remember one time I was screaming hysterically at a child in our neighborhood because he had done something to one of my kids, and my children it was just after we moved here, so this was years ago. I think my children were slightly shocked about my level of anger in that moment, but it was intense. So, and it wasn't this kind of a serious thing. So I'm pretty sure I would do whatever it took to try to find out what happened to my child. It was gritty. It was entertaining. It was fast paced in my mind, although I don't often write fast paced in the Storygraph app because I just think it gives people an expectation that may not be true for them. However, I really, really enjoyed it. I listened to this one too. I think I found it on Everand, and quite frankly, Dennis Lehane's other titles are of interest to me now too. Two more to go. The Last Train to Key West, Chanel Cleeton. I have been watching Chanel Cleeton's novels for a bit, and this one, for some reason, partly the cover, but partly the premise of it really caught my attention. It was set in Key West, obviously, but during a hurricane. So those are kind of, two things that draw me in because I love Key West and I do not love hurricanes. But it is three different women, three different perspectives and experiences while they are in Key West, what happens to them and how they are dealing with it is quite something. It's intense. It is, I thought, pretty fast paced. I read it on Kindle. I purchased it on Kindle. It was on sale one day. So I probably would reread this one. Probably I would reread all of these, to be quite honest, now that I say that to you. But I really thought this was well done. Sometimes three different perspectives can get a little bit bulky for me, and I wasn't sure if they were all going to end up meeting each other or if they were just going to stay separate. I don't want to spoil anything about that in that regard, but I did really think the character development and the plot of the story were evenly paced and very satisfying. And it made me definitely want to read another novel by Chanel Clayton because I think that she's a fantastic author. And the female perspectives that she brought forward of these characters and the development of those perspectives was quite spot on. All right, and the last one is Death at the Sanatorium, which I just finished not long ago and talked about in my reading wrap up for November. This one is Ragnar Jonason's novel. I've read several by him before, so this is not a new author to me. I really enjoy him though, and because this is an Icelandic mystery, it was translated into English by Victoria Cribb, who did a very good job translating it. What I like about Ragnar's work is that he's a bit Agatha Christie-esque for sure. He's been compared to Agatha Christie, and he's actually done some, I think he's translated some Christie titles into his language, and so they are able to be more accessible across the world, which I think is great. I also feel that sense of being in a space with her and when he writes, and I love the way that he plots things. I love the way that he develops characters, doesn't overly develop them. In some cases, you might want a little bit more of them, but he definitely makes you remember each of them, which I think is sometimes challenging for me in novels, mystery novels, where there are a number of characters. It's hard to keep them all straight. And when that happens, I just, don't feel the same way about it when I complete it. In this case, some of his other characters come back from other books that he's written, including one of my favorite ones. But also, it's a new, crop of folks too. I think that I will read a number of other books by this author, but I think what stands out for me in this case is the plotting, the character development in equal measure, but also I don't know, it's just something that you wouldn't necessarily expect, just a story that's unique. It's somewhat isolated to this community, obviously, but also to this sanatorium. The characters you're never really sure which one of them may have been involved in this, or was that a suicide? Like, there's just a lot of things that you have to unpack. And I really enjoyed the way that it unfolded and the people that were in this one. If you're a fan of Hulda, as I am, she does show up in this book, but not as much as I would have liked, to be quite honest. But if you've read the Hidden Iceland series, you know that Hulda there's something that happens there. So there's a little bit less involvement on her part than we would normally have. This one is newer than that series. And I really, really was pleased that I found this one at my library and picked it up. So that's 11 of the books that really stood out to me, enough to give them 4 stars, but also enough to bring them forward to you because I do feel that they will stay with me for a long time. And I would love to hear if you've read any of these, if you felt the same way, or if any of these are of interest to you and you plan on reading them. And then let me know what your 4-star books were this year that will really stand out for you, because chances are, because we're connected in this way, and some of us have been connected for years, we have the same taste in books. So I would be very, very happy to hear how you felt about the books that you read this year. If you have a channel, do link it in the comments below and let us take a look as well. I love this time of year because everybody's doing these wrap-ups about the books that they read, and to me, that's just the funnest thing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy reading. Bye.